My name is Fayaz Ahmed, and I'm a neurologist in the north of England. Thanks for coming back this morning. Usually Sunday mornings, people take an easy get-up, so settle yourself. We got three excellent academics this morning talking on three different topics. We will be talking about the migraine aura, the post-traumatic headache, and the psychology, cognitive behavior, and how this transforms from episodic to chronic migraine this morning. So I invite first Michele Viana. Michele Viana is a neurologist in Italy. He's got a PhD in neurosciences. He's worked with all the key figures in headache, Christina Tessorelli, Peter Goadsby, and he's been to everywhere, Pavia, King's, UCSF. He's published several studies about migraine aura, and he's going to talk about the migraine aura phenotype in migraine. So, Michele?
So thank you, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the introduction. Thank you to the organization. So I'm very honored to be here to speak about migraine aura. And okay, so migraine aura is a common and disabling neurological condition and is characterized by focal central nervous system symptoms with high level of inter and intra-variability among patients. And optimal knowledge of migraine area phenotype is very important for everyday clinical practice for the differential diagnosis with other serious neurological disorder like TIA, epilepsy, managing vascular risk therapies, and for basic and clinical research. Models and preclinical data need to be paired with the real world. Okay, so studies on phenotype of typical aura are very few, less than 20 in all the literature. Migraine aura phenotype, I'm speaking about the typical migraine aura. So what is made of? It's made of three symptoms. You know, the visual, the somatosensory, and dysphasic. And each symptoms can have different presentations. And they can group among them in different combinations. Let's see, this is the famous Venn diagram. These data are taken from my studies of a few years ago, and report the different combination of aura symptoms. And together, 98% of symptoms are visual. 32% are somatosensory, and 11% are dysphasic. But if we go into the different auras attack, 61% of our attacks are just visual. Almost all the rest are visual plus somatosensory and dysphasic, and just a very small percentage, like 1–2%, are just somatosensory and or dysphasic. So the first take-home message here is that if you see an aura that have no visual symptoms, this is very, very rare. Okay, so as a warning, okay, it's a warning situation. So here you can imagine that migraine aura is most a visual disturbance. And is a visual disturbance made of hundreds of scenarios, really, hundreds of scenarios. But what I faced off when I did my first study, a prospective study with diaries, I collected just out of more than 200 auras, 67 different scenarios. But you know, of course, we have more. And so what and this just for the visual. And you know, for somatosensory, there are very few phenotype because there are just the positive, like the tingling, the needles, and the negative, the numbness or anesthesia. As for dysphasic, we have the impaired language production or the comprehensive. So even also for these, in these cases, we are very few different scenarios. So coming back to the visual disturbances, the problem was how to classify all these different scenarios. This was the problem that I have in my studies. So what I did is I decided to dissect these visual phenomena into single basic visual symptoms, which I called elementary visual symptoms. For example, in this image here, you can see that there are two elementary visual symptoms, the zigzag lines here, and also, of course, the bright light. So in this aura, there are two elementary visual symptoms. And of course, in every aura, you can have different elementary visual symptoms that can group together. And in my studies, I found like 18 different elementary visual symptoms, but of course, this was in my study. So we searched with other colleagues in all the literature, all the other studies, how many of these elementary visual symptoms there was. And finally, we found 25, and these we published it in the Journal of Coed and Pain in 2019, and we created this list, okay? So we can find this list. These are all the different elementary visual symptoms with the definition and the description you can find. And and also, as coming back to my studies, so of course, every aura attack can have more than one of these elementary visual symptoms. As I told you, the median was 2 in my study for attack, with an interquartile range of 1 to 3, with a range of 1 to 4. And of course, as I told you here, we had 2, but just is a little part of a big table. Here, you can also find, for example, 3 in this case, but you can also find 4 in this aura attack. And so the visual disturbances of migraine aura are almost always present, in a wide spectrum, 25 elementary visual symptoms that can create hundreds of combinations. And of course, and indeed, they are not easy to describe verbally. And this is true both for the physician and for the patients. I don't tell this just by me, but it's very well known. And so what do we need in our clinical practice and in our research? I think that we need a series of illustrations of all elementary visual symptoms, which I call an iconography. You know, because that all the images that I show you before, that they are very different ones from one another. And literature and ICSD are completely lacking of an iconography. And ICSD just report 4 to 5 elementary visual symptoms, just the text, not 25, but 4 to 5. And patients, yes, some of them have tried to draw some of their visual aura and upload their own images. I show you some of them. And I analyzed them, actually. I published these results in Cephalalgia. But, of course, these images are not standardized, sparse, and nobody, nor patient nor researchers, try to collect them together in a systematic way and test on a group of patients. So what I did an aura iconography study, and the objective was to create and test a standardized migraine aura iconography in a large population of patients, and was a multi-center international observation study. And the center were Lugano, Switzerland, Copenhagen, Denmark, Trondheim, Norway, and Pozzilli, Italy. So I create this standardized migraine aura iconography with this series of images representing the disturbances, how? On the same background image and with the same style. I will show you some example. This, for example, was one, this another one, this another one, this another one. You can see the background images was the same. And of course, we created the aura disturbances with the same style, almost, as we can. So there were no confounders to detect which was the aura disturbances. So, and we create a web-based survey to be fulfilled at the end of a routine visit. And for each elementary visual disturbances, so we ask the patient, does these images resemble your aura? Of course, compare it with the normal vision, okay? So, of course, we wanted that the patient compare with the normal vision. If the patient say yes, okay, then you switch to another aura, another image. If you say no, okay, we ask if he had these visual symptoms via the text. Have you experienced during your auras any bright light? So what we wanted here is make sure that our images was fine, because maybe we didn't create a good representation of a bright light. So if we say yes, okay, we know that this image was not that good. If we say no, okay, so we were happy that, he just didn't have any bright light in the past during his aura. So, so at the end, for each patient, we will have something like that. This is just half, of course, because these are 25, and this is just half of the disturbances. So for some images, okay, for some disturbances, it could have recognized via our images or via text. And this is the other half of the disturbances. And the last questions we did to the patient was, have you ever experienced any other visual disturbances not reported by our images or text? And also I did another additional questions to the patient for every visual symptoms positive. I also asked the color, because this is something lacking in literature. There is something by Kiros, but it was is another study with methodological differences, and the intermittence and the flickering quality of the disturbances, because also this in the past was very poorly studied. And also we collect a lot of demographical and clinical characteristics. Of course, we already, during the visit, especially I was also very interested a part of the duration. You know that I'm very interested in the duration, but also the visual field involvement, the intravariability, and other characteristics. The results, these are the number of patients. 257 patients complete our study, complete the web survey. You see here divided by the centers. 36 years were the median age, 80% was the percentage of female. And so out of these patients, the number of elementary visual symptoms experienced in their lives was 1,741, and how many of those were recognized with our images? Quite a lot, 73%. So I was very happy with this data, because most of the disturbances of these patients in their lives were recognized via our images. I was very happy about this data. It's quite a lot, and this was in general. Now we can see for each disturbances, and you can see here that the rate, the recognition rate, what I call like that is, that is how out of the total number of the disturbances were recognized via our images. We have a very high peak, like 80%, 70%. just below 50%, we have just in 3 cases. Colored dots of round form, and this 41%. The visual no, that is 40% actually. And complex hallucination, that is 0%. But this is totally makes sense. You will see later on, which is the images of a complex hallucination, which I put a cat and a watch. You can have 1,000, you can have whatever you want of complex hallucination. I can't believe they didn't recognize my cat and my watch. So, and this was just in 4 cases. So, as you can see, the percent of recognition was very high. So, so we will see all the images that, and you will see the frequency of the occurrence in the life of patient of these images. So we have bright light. So this is 45% of patients have bright light in their lives. This is blurry vision, zigzag lines, scotoma, multiple scotoma that we call also scotomata, small bright dots, 45%, white spots, 40%. This is colored dots. Of course, here we have also a low rate of recognition, also because they choose different colors. And here, for example, we put just one color. This may be one of the reasons of a low rate of recognition. Lines, colored lines, 19%. Geometrical images, 24%. Deformed images. Sorry. This is looking through heat of waves, or water, or oil. This is visual snow, 23%. This is C shapes, 32%. Hemianopsia, 38%. This is deformed images, 25%. This is tunnel vision, 27%. This is oscillopsia, the sensation of movement of stationary objects, 37%. This is mosaic vision, 22%. This is fracturary object, 19%. This is corona effect, which is an extra edge around the objects, which is 7%. This is anopia, this is a total blindness, 8%. Micropsia, 20%. Macropsia, 20%. This is alteration of colors, like a negative film, 10%. And this is my cat, and is hallucination, complex hallucination, 1%. So we finished all the images. And also, as I told you before, so each patient can have different elementary visual symptoms in each aura, but of course during the different auras. So the median was 6, with an interquartile range between 3 and 10. And then the good thing is that 90% of patients recognize more than 50% of images, and just 10% below that rate, and just 1.5% of patients didn't recognize any image. So these are very good results also for use this tool as a text, as like a tool for the diagnosis. Okay. The last question was: did you see any new elementary visual, any new visual disturbance not reported? 31 patients responded positively, but just 1 actually contributed to really one new elementary visual symptom, which was a curtain. He defined a curtain phenomena, like it says, similar to tunnel vision, but instead of looking through a circle, it's like having a curtain on the side. The other one actually didn't report any new thing. It was something, not really new. Okay, I don't want to go into that because it was nothing new. And about the additional feature, we get very interesting results, but I don't want to, this would be interesting to go into in another presentation. Also for the clinical information, we get very interesting data, but there is not the time here for going to that. I want instead tell you about the Aura iconography 2.0, because with this data and with some suggestion of patients, we ameliorated these images, and with some, and some colleagues of the University of Trondheim in Norway, we created a new images, and in particular, we use an image. The amelioration was that we use a more clear background images, more contrasted and more clear, that I think would be better for understanding the disturbances. And so I created the new images that would be better. I think better for better understanding the disturbances, and for finally, I will show you now some of them, and I will let you know what I would like to propose. I will go fast here because they are more or less the same as before, although they are on a different background and with some amelioration. I will show you also the new phenomena, which is the curtain effect that this single patient reported, which is here, this curtain phenomena. And watch the real thing that I had a dream in the past, which was to create like a poster that every headache center in the world would have to facilitate the diagnosis of migraine aura, and to use everywhere, and to do, but not just for the diagnosis, but also for clinical studies. For example, maybe researchers would like to have, to compare two distinct populations, for example, to compare in MRI, functional MRI, and to divide them by phenotypes of their aura, and maybe this tool can be very helpful for divide the two groups. For example, one group with just this phenotype and another with just them, or a combination of them. But this could be of very help for different studies. Or also think epidemiological studies. It's very difficult to do epidemiological studies in migraine aura. And now with something like that, it's more easier. And another thing, in clinical practice, even in neurological setting, but not just that, because even in headache, in migraine, you discover a patient with aura at the end of the visit, or maybe you don't discover at all. But you think gynecologists can be very helpful for them to have a screening tool, because if they discover that a patient has migraine aura, they don't give up the pills, for example. So there are a lot of clinical implication, clinical research implication for this tool. And so I'm very happy to be with Henrik, which is a really great researcher and a very good friend in the education committee. And I proposed to him, he was very happy to accept my proposal to, in a few months, to create this poster and upload in our very important learning center in the IHS site, and to be downloadable for all the members of IHS. So this would be very important, a very important result for me and for my research of the last year. And that would be available for all of you that can find it helpful for the research and clinical practice. So I just need to thank my colleagues that helped me for having created this research, which are all the people that you can see here. And I want to thank you all for your attention. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question. there are about 25% people who get aura for longer than an hour. Is there a correlation between the nature of the aura and the duration they get? So what I mean is that those who get longer period or longer duration have different type of aura compared to the one with the short duration.
No, actually not. This is a very interesting question. I published it a few years ago, a paper specifically focused on prolonged aura, and I compared the phenotype of people who has prolonged aura, which I detected in a prospective study. So we were totally sure that they have a prolonged aura, and we compared the phenotype, and it was totally the same of the other people. So no, there are no clinical marker in the phenotype.
Okay, thank you. We got a question from the front here. Have we got a mic coming in?
Very nice artwork, Michele. Just one question. I mean, aura is not just an image. It also has movements and dynamics. How did you implement that into your study, that an aura is changing from one symptom to the other and has some movements, not just one single picture?
This is a very good point, very good point. And what I can tell you is that this is just a start. This is just a start in a sea, in a big, huge sea with waves, changes of light, clouds, fishes. I mean, you are right, but this is just a start. And for example, I would say also the intermittence, the colors. And I mean, I was very astonished when I see, and we should reflect, we should think that in the classification, there is no any list of visual disturbance. As I told you, just 4 and 5. If you go to the classification, there are just 4 and 5. They speak about scotoma, zigzag lines, and few. If you think that in the classification, they say positive means scintillation, which is totally, is not like that. Scintillation is something, is intermittent. I mean, there is a lot of work to do. I'm happy to do, and I'm another worker, but there is a lot to do. So what you are telling is totally true. But it is another kind of study. For example, this is a static ones. So what you're telling is something that we should do in movement. I will do that because I have created an Aura app that people should open this app while they have aura, migraine aura. And every 2 minutes, they should the pitch design where aura is going. So in that way, this is the only way to represent what is going on. So I will have this data when we'll have, but also for this case, we'll have huge data because every 2 minutes we have a picture. So, but this, you are totally true. This is a part of the problem. If you want to help me with, I mean, it's a huge amount of data.
Yes, I would really like to congratulate with your tremendous work you did. In your experience, to what extent do we still underestimate the presence of aura?
A lot. I mean, it's not just my experience. I studied the literature, and we should, all of them, we should read just one study, the study of the Norwegian neurologist, okay? And say that 39% of Norwegian neurologists has migraine with aura. 39%. Is a lot. Is a lot. And 14% of them, 14, has just aura without any headache, 14. That means that, or there is a huge selection bias that can be, but the fact is that a lot of people outside in the general population have maybe 1-2 auras in their life, but don't come to you to tell you, because they maybe don't have migraine, or they maybe have just a few auras or migraine auras in their life and don't come to tell to doctors.
thing from you, because we need to move on.
Hello? Yeah. I want to ask you about your opinion about the entity persistent aura in some patients that may last longer than autoimmune aura, autonomic aura. Did you pass by autonomic aura that may be related to constriction of the cornea, for, like that? Maybe associated with palpitation. Have you come to something like that?
So the first thing
First
was the
question,
persistent aura.
Yeah.
I mean,
There is entity in the diagnosis that persistent aura with or without cerebral infarction.
What was the persistent aura actually? It was mostly the phenotype of visual snow, mostly, which is visual snow. If you, in the last year, this was some paper that was printed many years ago after they stopped and visual snow started to be, so it was visual snow, actually.
Practical point, because it may be really confused with infarction or something else. Yani, if it remained for 2, 3, 4 days, if it didn't come to something like that.
Okay, but
it's in the diagnosis.
I mean, I am speaking about the typical aura. This is just out of the topic.
We need to move on. I've been told that I'm not sharing it well. Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah.